Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you wherever you are. My name is Idris Sulaiman, and it's a great pleasure to be part of this third International Green IT Week. And a big thanks to all organizers and sponsors of this event. Here's an outline for the presentation. Firstly, I'll be introducing the concept of green convergence, where I'll be talking about some studies that covers ICT as low carbon solution providers in 5 critical sectors, covering also their monetary value and CO2e or carbon emissions and benefits. This will include the built environment or buildings. The second part, I will cover the area which I call the technology green convergence, whereby I'm looking at a number of technologies that have been shown to improve the integration between application of ICTs in buildings and show some of the hidden values of the smart building solutions. Third part, I'll be covering what I call the governance aspect of green convergence, and outlining the particular example of the new data center standard or metric built inside a built environment framework. And finally, I'll offer some conclusions in the way of why both technology and governance green convergence are important. As an introduction of why ICT energy standard matters, I will start with a quote from Malcolm Johnson, who's the director of the International Telecommunications Union, at this recent 7th ITU Symposium on ICT's Environment and Climate Change. He said that ICTs now permeate our lives, and there are an estimated 6 billion mobile phone users and 2.4 billion internet users. The key point that he made was in the speech was that the incredible growth in ICTs has many different implications unless we manage to get in place intelligent standards for energy efficient devices. And of course that includes data centers. Strong growth of ICTs will also mean strong growth in the power needed to run ICTs. This is indeed a stark warning about the potential of ICTs as major sources of pollution, but this presentation is really more about ICTs as energy efficiencies solutions. The Pike report also lists 20 leading building energy management system providers and stated that there are many energy efficiency improvements available for buildings, from high energy efficiency heating, ventilation and air conditioning systems to the use of energy efficient lighting technologies. The report also noticed that there is an increasing use of energy performance contracting, where energy efficient service companies are financed through guaranteed savings. Note that Exergy Australia is one of those service companies. In this slide, I'd like to provide you with more facts from a very authoritative source. Next slide, I'd like to talk about the built environment potential, and I'd like to show you some results from the report written by the International Energy Agency, one of the most authoritative global agency when it comes to energy research. And it shows that built environment accounts for 40% of energy use in most countries, putting them amongst the largest energy use sectors. And when it comes to savings, The report suggests that building sector is one of the most cost-effective sectors by reducing energy consumption to the tune of 1,509 million tons of oil equivalent by 2050, which is also equivalent to the potential mitigation up to 12.6 gigatons of CO2e emissions by 2050. The report also suggests that the built environment would be an arena where converging technologies along with intelligent ICT control systems can allow buildings to become net producers of renewable energy. But for this to happen, many different stakeholders and solutions must come together to deliver such paradigm shift. And the convergence can take place only as there is now new materials, better performance of ICT control systems and design software, lower prices on renewables, and increased broadband connectivity, which is often set up in new cluster-based solutions. What is most exciting is that within the Australian context, green buildings can offer up to 9% savings in operating expenses and lead to a 7.5% rise in values. This, according to Romilly Mathew, the CEO of the Australian Green Building Council, makes smart building to be truly the lowest of the low-hanging fruits. In this next slide, outlining some of the examples on how ICTs can enable smart buildings, from building information modeling, which can facilitate building design to optimize energy and material use, to wireless sensor networks to connect all kinds of devices that is existing in the building, and then potentially this can allow them to control everything that consumes energy or electricity. And then also the building energy management systems, which automatically manage, reduce energy consumption and control heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems, lighting systems, sensors, and so on. And finally, the integration of such building energy management systems over a larger area or clusters through the internet offers really an exciting opportunity. The third section of the talk will cover the governance aspect of the green ICT and green building convergence. First, using the example of data centers, we know that they now have to cope with increasing loads of data, and Greenpeace estimated that in 2011 alone there was an increase of 133% over the previous year. Now, it is the sources of power or electricity of these data centers that have become under closer scrutiny. Many of the well-known cloud providers are using coal-based electricity, which led Greenpeace to start their latest "How Clean Is Your Data" campaign. Their detailed report gives a clear picture on the percentages of what they call dirty energy, meaning coal and electricity energy sources that are powering some of the major IT companies. The current Greenpeace campaign is actually a continuation from an earlier campaign on how dirty is your data. This campaign started the initial focus on the energy choices made by IT companies from around April 2011. That campaign focused on the need for greater transparency from global IT brands on energy and carbon footprint of their internet infrastructure or server farms and data centers. Now, many internet users, IT using companies and governments are starting to have a greater awareness on the location of the data. Issues such as privacy, cyber and physical security, and increasingly environmental standards are becoming more under scrutiny. And thanks to Greenpeace and others, these environmental and energy standards have become more prominent as an issue. However, in general, cultural shift needs to happen to see so that majority of users will not only view their energy sources, but also energy efficiency of data centers or server farms that they're using. At the end of the day, price may no longer be the only variable for determining locational choice. Now there are web-based tools for users such as FlagFox for the open source Firefox that are available to find out about the location of any internet site which suggests the location of their servers. Now let's turn to the economics of the data centers. From this figure you can easily see that over the years from 1996 to 2010, projected level, that businesses are spending an increasing large proportion of their IT budgets on maintenance and power and cooling. According to the IDC research organization, in 2006, businesses worldwide spent about 55.4 billion on new servers and approximately 28 billion to power and cool those machines. This means that almost half of cost of the equipment itself is allocated to just powering the infrastructure. More recent data shows similar result, I believe. So for every $1 spent on the server, more than half a dollar or 50 cents is spent on energy to power and cool it. Such amount of expense that business will have to consider to spend on the powering and the cooling of data centers is only going to go up. So it's critical that for IT departments and managers to get control over the spending on computing, storage, and resources. Now let's turn to standards in buildings and data centers. There are principally three standards. The first is based on minimum requirements as outlined by traditionally what's known as building codes, which most developed countries at least will have a legislated building code. Secondly, there are design-based assessments such as the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, or LEED, which is a US-based assessment. And there's also the Green Star, which is used in Australia and a number of other countries by green building councils. Last but not least, there are performance-based metrics for buildings generally, such as the Australian National Australia Built environment rating scheme. In North America, there is a consortium called Green Grid, which formulates standards in data centers. And also the US Environmental Protection Agency, under the Energy Star program, has been working on a set of data center standards. All of these principal standards have their pros, cons, and purpose. For example, with the performance-based standard, the pros are that these standards can be assessed by on the basis of real data, and it allows comparison with real peers, and it's often cheap to assess based on non-prescriptive criteria, and therefore can drive innovation. On the con side, only how a site is, it assesses performance-based standards only assesses how a site is performing, not on how it improves a site, and the rating may change over time. This next slide offers a quick overview of NEBORS, which is the National Australia Building Energy Rating Scheme. It was established for the officers initially in 1999 on a voluntary basis, and it has facility which will split the responsibility of stakeholders, that is the tenants, as opposed to landlords. It is a performance-based standard, and therefore it counts for differences in operations, that is by size, by climate, by hours of operation, but now increasingly it's part of a mandatory disclosure procedure in Australia. With the star rating, we have initially a 0 to 5-star scale, and recently this has been extended to a 6-star scale. Now, in terms of Australia, there is a relatively new mandatory building energy disclosure regulation. In Australia, it's basically following some of the trends around the world, where governments are increasingly introducing stringent energy regulations. Australia may be seen as one of the early movers that have moved from a voluntary to a mandatory system since the passing of the Building Energy Efficiency Disclosure Act number 67 in 2011. What's interesting is that as a result of this act, there's much greater interest in compliance in Australia, and we have here also the link for the actual act itself for those who might be interested. To look at an example of green convergence from the governance perspective, and that is the new Australian data center rating tool. This rating tool has been developed based on a benchmark study by Exergy Australia, and it was commissioned by two government agencies. One is the state or New South Wales State Office of Environment and Heritage, and secondly it was done in collaboration with the Federal Department of Climate Change and Energy Efficiency. It's worthwhile to note that this metric standard is probably, as far as the authors know, is the first of its kind in the world. And that is a combined ICT building framework within the NEBORS standard, and that is the Built Environment Standard. The benchmarking data were actually collected from 33 data centers, and by now the trial phase for this benchmarking study is finally completed, and the rating tool itself is due for a full launch in October this year. In this slide you can see that the neighbors for the data center is similar rating tool to the Energy Star from the US EPA, but it is a different design rating tool from a design rating such as the LEED. The principal difference of this performance-based rating tool is that it has a infrastructure rating component as well as an IT workload rating component. All of the methodology is based on existing neighbors energy rating tool for office buildings, shopping centers, hotels, and so on. Regarding the infrastructure rating metric, the format looks very familiar to anyone that's seen the power usage effectiveness indices. So this metric is internationally consistent, and industry is quite familiar with this sort of format. The difference is that it has this focus on emissions, so the PUE will be calculated based on the power distribution unit output energy and also greenhouse gases emissions, which is accounted for various alternative fuels. If, say, the data center is powered by gas or any other alternative sources of energy. So the formula, as you can see there, is pretty standard. The PUE for emissions is calculated as whole data centers GHG emissions over IT workload GHG emissions. So what has led to a better data center rating tool, and what are the distinguishing feature of this data center metric? The distinguishing feature of this data center metric is its IT workload metrics, which has two primary metrics for production, one being total processing capacity measured in gigahertz, and secondly is the total storage capacity measured in terabytes. As you can see here, the total processing capacity is defined as the sum total of the number of cores multiplied by the gigahertz per core, whereas the total storage capacity is the total unformatted storage terabyte capacity of all end user accessible disks and automated tape libraries, particularly which are bigger than 200 terabytes. Once those formulas and others, which I won't elaborate in detail, is worked out, you could see that the benchmark outcome will give a fairly good fit, where the actual and predicted emissions are captured by a model, and that model covers both infrastructure and computing, processing, and storage metrics. So the benchmarking study has come up with several recommendations or tips for cost savings, which is directed at the IT managers and anyone who is interested in the data center standards. So to obtain higher energy performance with ICTs, there's no doubt that there's a need to focus on measurement standards and metric tools. And then secondly, ICT systems have performance risks similar to other complex technologies. One example is the HVAC variable air volume technology, which is one of the latest building technologies. This sort of technology, like any other sort of data center technology, may not actually give the results, the best results, unless there are better communications, training, due diligence of standards implementations. So standard matters as much as non-technology factors matters. And in other words, smart buildings or ICTs by themselves can't deliver energy improvements. It is the integrated management of non-technology and non-behavioral factors that are needed to bring about those improvements. In closing, I would like to offer some closing comments. No doubt that from technology perspective, the green convergence in buildings and ICTs is happening today. And my presentation hopefully shows a number of technology offerings that are now available, and greater transparency when it comes to better value propositions. Now, from the governance perspective, the green convergence in buildings and ICTs is only starting to happen. Australia now offers or will be launching this new data center neighbors metric. While other countries might follow more IT based standards, nevertheless, there are possible attractiveness of this converge green building, green ICT standards that might be of interest to other countries, so that they might like to follow Australia's example in having a combined metric. And connected to the governance, there's no doubt that data storage location matters, and only now more people are requiring greater standards of transparency. Finally, there's little doubt that both technology and governance aspect of the green convergence are critical in addressing climate change, and both are needed in dealing with the impending energy crisis. Now, I will just leave it at that, and in the next slide I have a number of links to do with courses that are available in green ICT strategies, which covers also a number of data center issues, and will then leave leave for further questions. Now, the presentation has covered in some lengths the new Australian data center metric, which is couched in the built environment framework, namely the neighbors framework. Now, some other countries may have IT-based standards. However, other countries that have not formulated standards may consider Australia's example in having a combined metric. Now, standards can only be relevant if they are used, so there is an urgent need to raise the awareness of netizens, companies, policymakers about the environmental and energy standards, and to put out the message that data storage location matters. Finally, there is little doubt that both technology and governance aspect of the green convergence are critical in addressing climate change and impending energy crisis. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my green convergence presentation, and I'll invite your questions for the Q&A session, which will be scheduled at 11 p.m. on Wednesday, the 6th of June. Also, I'll be leaving you in my presentation with one other slide that covers some of the green ICT courses offered at the ANU and other related sources. Thank you.